Hello, I want to welcome everyone to our Legislative Black Caucus press conference. We're starting this session off right as you saw my son in the background. I guess this is the virtual world that we're living in. I want to begin by thanking everyone that has made this trying 365 days less challenging. We left session in 2020 focused and on the work ahead, but also appreciative of what we had accomplished alongside our colleagues in the 2020 session. We walked out of the chambers and we were met with COVID-19 and later what we now see as an opportunity, but a smack in the face as it relates to the other challenge related to race relations in America. We have since had a special session, and we are proud of the accomplishments related to the Legislative Black Caucus agenda from the special session, but we realize there's still much more work to do. And we remain laser focused on the work ahead. We will not be wrapped into the rhetoric. We will not be wrapped into the foolishness of the day. We will remain focused on those kitchen table items that impact individual lives day to day here in the Commonwealth of Virginia and every corner of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We take responsibility for our opportunity and we take hold of our opportunity to make a significant difference, whether that's healthcare, access to the ballot box, whether that's justice reform, education, you name it. If it impacts the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia, particularly individuals that are Black individuals and living at or below the margins, we want to make sure that we are their voice and we will maintain as we stand on the shoulders of giants. We know what our mission is. And so as you listen to our members, you will hear our focus remains the same. We will continue to fight for those things that we have fought for decades. And we appreciate the support. I also want to take a moment to thank our executive director, Adele McClure, who has been phenomenal in this space, has shown up gracefully, but has not backed down to me or anyone else. As we move forward with our agenda, she is the best ghostwriter you could possibly have. And I just want to say thank you, Adele, for your leadership as we move forward. And I keep wanting to call this a special session. It's a unique session, but again, we will not discount the opportunities that we have this session. We will move forward with the agenda just as we would if we were all at the Capitol. And again, I look forward to not only you hearing from my colleagues as it relates to the legislation we push forward, but also we look forward to the work. And so, Adele, would you welcome the first caucus member?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. So next we have Delegate Jeff Bourne speaking on housing.
Thank you, Adele, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is always good to be with my colleagues in the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, whether that's in person or virtually, because I truly believe that we are, as has been said about the congressman from Newport News, the conscience of our caucus, the conscience of our Commonwealth. As the chairman explained in his opening remarks, we continue to be relentless in our pursuit of justice on a host of issues. And over the last 12 months, what we found is that the pandemic that we are still in has only exacerbated those issues which confront and confound many of the communities that we represent. In particular, COVID-19 has highlighted for many, but reaffirmed for us the inequities and inequalities in our housing. issues. The pandemic has exacerbated many of those housing issues that too many Virginians were already experiencing. It's highlighted that people are struggling to pay their mortgages. People are facing evictions at alarmingly high rates. They're experiencing homelessness. They're struggling for a most basic need and right, which is that of good quality, affordable housing. As we've done in the past, we're going to continue to fight on these issues. And in the 2021 unique session, I and my colleagues are going to support expanding and protecting tenants' rights. That includes strengthening the eviction protections that were implemented through the budget, supporting additional funding and resources and support for the rental and mortgage assistance relief. We're going to support expanding the right of redemption and improving post-payment notice as a means to better prevent evictions. We're also going to champion bills that will help us build and address the supply side of the affordable housing crisis. We're going to try and strengthen the foreclosure protections for homeowners as well as for mobile homeowners and residents. We're going to support additional investments into the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. And selfishly, for me and for Senator Locke from Hampton, we're going to support and fight for the creation of a state low-income housing or state housing opportunity tax credit so that we can help incentivize and fill some financial gaps for those builders, developers, construction folks that want to build truly affordable housing so that we can continue to provide that most basic right and resource for our families in Virginia. Through these measures and many, many more, we're going to focus on keeping Virginians secure and safe in affordable homes during these extremely trying times. And Mr. Chairman, I hope I have not exceeded my 2 to 4 minutes, so I would yield back the balance of any time that I might have.
Thank you, Delegate Bourne. And next we will hear from Senator Louise Lucas. President Pro Tem, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to everybody. I'm the chief co-patron of the Senate bill to legalize cannabis this session with an emphasis on equity, including expungement of past criminal charges, which we know disproportionately affect Virginians of color. Marijuana prohibition has historically been based in discrimination, and the impact of criminalization laws have disproportionately harmed minorities and low-income communities as a result. Legislation that we are introducing this year will focus on undoing these harms by including a funding and a process for expunging marijuana-related offenses, promoting diverse participation in the newly created cannabis industry, and investing in the communities harmed by prohibition. The bill also will include language dedicated, we will dedicate a portion of the future revenues to expand quality pre-K access to at-risk 3 and 4-year-olds. As was said on yesterday in a press conference, 72% of all 3-year-olds from economically disadvantaged homes do not have access to quality early learning. Just a fraction of the revenues from marijuana sales could provide a launch pad for over 20,000 children within 5 years of legalization. And that is why the members of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus will be the champions to push to legalize marijuana in equity and just the way we look forward. And this is the way we look forward to the session going. And Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much for allowing me to speak this morning.
Thank you, Madam President. And I do want to echo Senator Lucas and her remarks, and also thank members of this caucus for your work and working with the administration to make sure that the pieces in that piece of legislation is inclusive and has in it what we desire as it relates to expungement and access to the industry. Many states across this nation have attempted to legalize marijuana in their own way, but I think Virginia has an opportunity to make sure that African Americans, Blacks in this Commonwealth get their fair share. And that is our focus. And so Senator, thank you for your leadership. Thank you to the many other individuals, including Delegate Scott and Herring and Delegate Price, and all those individuals who have dedicated time to making sure we get this right, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it's the first real opportunity for African Americans in the Commonwealth to get their fair share of agriculture and business. And so we're looking forward to it. Thank you, Delegate Herring, as you will, Leader Herring, as you will take the leadership in the House on this. Next, we
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank the Black Caucus as well, because without all of us working together in concert, this would not be possible. So we owe a great debt of gratitude to all of you. And so you are all due the credit for where we are right now, based on what we've done in past years in a special session. So my hat's off to each of my members, each of my colleagues in the Black Caucus. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And next and that's a good segue to our next piece, and we will hear from our House Majority Leader, Shanae Herring. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd also like to thank my colleagues over the years on so many issues that we've fought hard on, and we're finally seeing gains to bring equity into the lives of so many people. Today, I'm going to talk about automatic expungement because it is one of my passions. Simply, and I will say this, over the past years, we've seen expungement bills come and go, and I noticed that we were sort of picking and choosing winners and losers. So all these bills were combined and sent to a crime commission for a study. And the crime commission came out with a product that says basically this: for most misdemeanor convictions and drug felonies, that was included because some individuals have become addicted to drugs. So we wanted to make sure that we address that population. If after conviction, you go 8 years without a conviction, your record will be automatically expunged. It's free, it's equitable, and it's far-reaching. I believe in redemption and second chances for individuals, as every member of this Black Caucus does. And this will help individuals. With convictions on your record, it's hard to find a job, it's hard to get housing, it's hard to get a loan to get capital to start your business. So this bill is so meaningful to me and so many Virginians, and I'm proud, Mr. Chair, to say it has support of so many people, and I'm looking forward to announcing some additional support to finally get it over the finish line. I think this is very important, and it's expansive, and we'll join some other states that has automatic expungement. The last state that most recently did it was Michigan, while we were in special session debating the bill. So I'm looking forward to the work ahead, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to thank everybody on the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus for your support and work on this important measure.
Thank you, Madam Leader. And we look forward to that work. I know you put a lot of time, and we gave it a good shot, special session. But now with it going to the Crime Commission, and being fully vetted, I am hopeful that we will get it across the finish line, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Delegate Price. Delegate Price has recently been appointed in a new position that I'm sure she will speak on, and it's something that she has been fighting for quite some time, not the position, but the work. And with this past election, we were able to make sure that this was not only a safe election physically to participate in, but we also were able to make sure that we protected the ballots and the ballot box. And so this was the safest, most accessible, most convenient election that I believe we've had in the Commonwealth. And with the leadership of Delegate Price and others, we will continue down that road. Delegate Price.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Delegate Tia Price, and I represent the 95th District with parts of Newport News and Hampton. And as the chairman mentioned, I have been newly appointed by the Speaker as the Vice Chair of the House Privileges and Elections Committee, and I will serve as Chair of the newly formed Voting Rights Subcommittee. And I'm really excited about all that we will accomplish this year. With the recent events in the last 4 years, and really the last 400 years, we know that restricting voting rights has been the tool used to keep a select few in power. The fight for voting rights is not a thing of the distant past. The civil rights movement continues as long as the rights we fought for and won are being attacked. And so it is time that we move forward in our Commonwealth and take a stand to make sure that voter suppression, discrimination, and intimidation can be contained to our past. Last year, several of us worked to remove the vestiges of outdated code that reached back to voter suppression, like sections pertaining to poll taxes. Well, this year we are laser focused on proactively protecting the voting rights of all, especially those that have been targeted for suppression decade after decade. We know that we must protect our democracy and the ability for Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities to access equally the ballot box. For the last few months, we have seen significant examples that if you make voting accessible, people will participate. And we need to take note of the turnout we saw in Virginia due to the advancements that the chairman was just speaking of. We now have longer periods of early voting, no excuse absentee voting, voter ID that did not require a photo, and more. We went from being ranked number 49 in the ease of states for voting to number 12 in 2020. This didn't just happen. This was the result of hard work of advocates like the Lawyers Committee, New Virginia Majority, the NAACP, the Advancement Project National Office, and so many more. It was also because of the hard work from members that I stand with today, fighting unceasingly for what we know is right. Making the elections process easier is awesome, but it isn't enough. We need to dig deeper, and we will this year. One of our priorities is getting the Voting Rights Act of Virginia passed as we continue to get into good trouble. This is a comprehensive bill based on the 1965 Voting Rights Act. It builds upon and modernizes this historic law to better expand and protect the right to vote for all Virginians on the state level. Also, the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus prioritizes amending the Virginia Constitution to better enshrine protections for the right to vote. And we support Virginia signing the National Popular Vote Compact, which will require Virginia to make its presidential electoral votes for the candidate that wins the national popular vote, getting us to one person, one vote, not one elector, one vote. Our members will also carry legislation to allow for early Sunday voting and to improve access to curbside voting. We will also support legislation allowing students to take a partial day excused absence in order to partake in civic or political engagement, because we understand the younger you start, the better the outcome. These are a few of the ways Virginia can continue to improve, making voting easy, safe, and accessible for all. Our democracy is only as good as the extent to which the people can participate. The Virginia Legislative Black Caucus will continue our legacy to make sure our most foundational right, the right to vote, is protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Price. And next we will hear from Delegate Don Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the Black Caucus, the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. To me, it's the most powerful caucus in the Virginia General Assembly. When we stand together, there's nothing that we can't accomplish. And I just wanted to take a quick minute just to talk about criminal justice reform. At the end of the day, what we were able to accomplish over this last year has been no less than historic. Just in this last cycle, we were able to empower localities to create civilian review boards with subpoena and disciplinary authority. We were able to push this very hard Brianna's law. We ended no-knock warrants, no-knock search warrants. We downgraded what they call pretextual stops and traffic violations. You heard Senator Lucas talk about banning police from using the smell of marijuana as a basis for a probable cause search and stop of a vehicle. We passed the jury penalty sentencing, where now juries will hear and decide guilt or innocence, but the judge will be the sentencer, and that will reduce the aggravating factors that folks face in going to jury trial. We created a statewide code for police officers, a statewide code of conduct for them. We mandated racial bias de-escalation and crisis intervention training for police. We created a mental health response team for police, the Marcus Alert that Delegate Bourne rolled through. We limited the use of chokeholds, required police officers to intervene if someone was using excessive force. We passed the increased earned sentence credit bill to allow folks who are model prisoners to be able to earn more time off their sentences. That will affect up to 14,000 people having their sentences reduced and recalculated. And we gave prosecutors the authority to dismiss cases, low-level cases, if they need to, if they want to, and gave them the discretion to do that. We made it a hate crime to make a false 911 call, the Karen law, that folks were using and abusing. We made that a hate crime if someone misused the 911 call. So we did a lot of things last session, and we now have the opportunity this session to do even more. On our agenda this cycle, we plan on introducing bills that will limit folks from getting incarcerated on what they call technical violations, like you missed the call to your probation officer, so forth and so on. Basically, no new criminal offense. So we're introducing a bill that says that you can't incarcerate somebody if they don't commit a new crime, which some folks would think that's common sense, but if you're on probation, that's not true. We have well over 6,000 people in prison for not having committed a new crime, for technical violations of their parole. We're going to introduce bills that will give our citizens the opportunity to, as Senator Lucas was saying, we hopefully be introducing a bill to commute sentences of folks who are serving for possession with intent to distribute. We're going to have a multi-billion-dollar industry that we're about to hopefully pass. And so we want the folks who have been, our communities have been harmed and penalized for that, not to still be in prison for something that's going to be legal, hopefully in the next year. We hopefully will be ending qualified immunity. We'll be introducing a bill to end qualified immunity, in the death penalty, in minimum mandatory sentencing. So we got a lot of stuff on our agenda. We have a very aggressive agenda this session, and I think this is an opportunity for the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus to continue to show that we are leaders on not only criminal justice, but justice and righteousness in general. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Scott. And I feel like every time I have a conversation with Delegate Scott, I come out smarter and more prepared. I find myself frequently calling him for my own constituents, and then I thank him, because oftentimes I just have to say I just have to pass my constituents off to him. And so I want to thank Delegate Scott for coming straight into this General Assembly and exercising the opportunity to lead in such a space where some of our most vulnerable citizens need us the most. I know my colleagues are just like me. We have gotten so many individuals to call us, email us, send letters to express injustices across the Commonwealth. And so our Vice Chair, Jennifer McClellan, often reminds us that we have to represent all of the every corner of the Commonwealth as the Legislative Black Caucus. We can't just focus on those individuals that can vote for us directly. And so we are so committed to all of the items that Delegate Scott just outlined as it relates to our accomplishments, but also as it relates to our work list, not our wish list, because we can't just wish for it to happen. We got to work for it to happen. And so many would say you all had an awesome 2020 session and an awesome 2020 special session. You should be satisfied. But again, there are still individuals that are experiencing injustices. And so I know Delegate Scott won't let that continue, and the balance of this caucus won't as well. Next, we will hear from my good friend, Delegate Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly we're excited to be here with our fellow members of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, and excited about not only the fight that we have in front of us and for decades that we've been fighting, but also the sense of parrhesia and the plain speak and plain talk and speaking truth to power that goes along with this caucus makes me proud to be a member. It goes without saying that this caucus's legislative agenda for decades has always represented a fight against many generations of catastrophic laws and policies affecting Black, brown, and marginalized communities. And therefore, we're here today to continue the struggle of speaking truth to power with an understanding that we must follow suffering and allow it to speak. That is the common denominator of what we, the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, represent. In an age of the Internet of Things, it is extremely important that we fight for digital equity, digital rights, digital competence, and data privacy. We believe that every person and every community must have information technology bandwidth and speeds to fully participate in this economy and this democracy. Further, we believe that an individual's personal identifiable information is just that. It's theirs, and it belongs to them. And the crux of this whole matter is that data privacy rights are civil rights, and it should be handled in a trustworthy manner, and these data privacy rights should not be taken for granted. Unfortunately, currently, Virginians are unprotected when it comes to the sharing and selling of their data. All Virginians need data privacy, and we believe that Virginia consumers ought to have the right to know what's being collected about them, the right to access their data, the right to correct any erroneous data, the right to delete data, the right to opt out of their data being sold, the right to portability, and protections for data minimization. Finally, companies should have data protection assessment plans so that this issue of data protection is one of a proactive posture rather than being reactive when it comes to the data protection rights of the Commonwealth citizens. The citizens have voiced their concerns about this matter of their data. We must allow for the lifting of every voice in this Commonwealth regarding this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I want to also thank you for your work. I know that it's been a heavy lift with this particular piece of legislation, but you have made time to talk and take time to listen to folks from the industry, folks that the advocates, and I feel confident that you have done everything that you could to make this the best bill possible for all stakeholders, and we look forward to the discussion and the debate on the legislation, but most importantly, we look forward to making sure that we finally get something on the books to protect these civil rights. And so next up, we will hear from our Vice Chair, Senator Jennifer McCullough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During this COVID-19 pandemic, Virginia students, teachers, parents, education, and childcare personnel have faced unique barriers and challenges, including having to adjust to a virtual learning environment. And at the same time, many education equity issues that existed before the pandemic continue to be exacerbated in the pandemic. The Virginia Legislative Black Caucus members will be carrying a comprehensive array of education-focused legislation. This includes measures that implement fully the standards of quality, or SOQs, recommended by the Board of Education, which aim to increase educational opportunity in Virginia. One of these key pieces of legislation is the School Equity and Staffing Act, introduced by Delegate Aird in the House and me in the Senate. Delegate Aird and I have been working with education leaders, teachers, parents, and students on this important bill for several years. This act would invest $1 billion annually to address inequities in our education system, helping those schools who struggle to provide adequate staffing, resulting in insufficient counselors, social workers, instructional aides, and administrative and custodial staff. We will also fight to lift the school personnel cap, which was a pre-recession cap that limits the number of social workers, school counselors, nurses, and vice principals that are in schools. Lifting this cap is essential to ending the school to prison pipeline, holistically addressing barriers to our children's learning, and helping our teachers have the freedom to teach with the necessary support of their support staff co-workers. Specifically, the School Equity and Staffing Act will increase funding for our school counselors and ensure that there is one counselor for every 250 students. Remove the support cap, thus increasing funding for school support staff, and increase funding for English learner students based on proficiency. Other legislation carried by Legislative Black Caucus members will define segregation in the SOQs and create an assessment system for measuring how school systems are addressing systemic segregation. We will also have legislation to establish the Educational Equity Fund pilot program, to establish cultural competency for Virginia educators, to enhance diversity and inclusion in the governor's school. We will also work to expand access to education for immigrant students and support the childcare industry during this COVID-19 pandemic and beyond by establishing a pilot program that allows flexibility in how federal subsidy dollars can be used for childcare. We will also ask JLARC to study the impacts of COVID on our students and their learning so we can better plan how to address those impacts going forward. This legislation and all of the legislation you have heard about from our caucus members earlier this morning are just a piece of the many important historic policies and reforms that the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus will champion this session. We have many, many challenges ahead. This year, we have experienced and continue to experience an unprecedented global pandemic, an economic crisis, a reckoning with the pandemic of racism that permeates many aspects of our society, and a growing lack of faith in many people in government's ability to understand and solve their problems. And just last week, we've watched as our very institutions and principles of democracy have been violated and attacked. 151 years ago, the first African American members of the Virginia General Assembly took their oath and began the work to make this Commonwealth a more equitable place. After a swift backlash, when they were disenfranchised through changes to the Constitution, through racial terror lynchings, and the beginning of a lost cause narrative, we were gone for a while. With the election of Fergie Reed in 1968, the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus came back, and we are now stronger and more determined than ever. This session in Virginia, we have an opportunity to push not only our Commonwealth, but our country back in the right direction. A chance to protect the right to vote, to protect our democracy, to combat this global pandemic, and to provide a brighter, safer future for all Virginians across this proud Commonwealth. I am proud to stand here with my colleagues in the Legislative Black Caucus as we begin this important work today. Thank you all very much. And then I think Adele will turn it over to anyone who has questions.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair McClellan. Members of the press, if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll be taking a couple of questions. And as you raise your hand, I'll bring you on to ask your question directly. All right, I'll give it about 10 seconds. And if members of the press don't have a question, then we'll close, Mr. Chairman.
Adele, while we wait, I do want to say, and I know it sounds sort of passive, but we are praying for our colleagues in Washington as they deal with turmoil, actually praying with individuals and state legislators and leaders across our nation at this time of turmoil. as we transition leadership, is important for us to make sure that we also thank those individuals that often are in the background in the spaces that we occupy. And I'm speaking of law enforcement, Capitol Police, particularly the gentleman who lost his life protecting members of Congress. And I want to just want to make sure that everyone knows that the members of Congress, staff, Capitol Police, all those individuals that work in and around that space, in our thoughts and prayers, as well as those individuals that work here around our Capitol grounds. And so thank you for allowing me to take that moment of personal privilege to do that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Delegate Price.
Just for clarification for where we are in this moment of history, I wanted to let the public know that there are 23 members of the Virginia General Assembly. And as we celebrated recently the anniversary of Delegate Yvonne Miller happening in 1984, and being the first Black woman to serve in the House and the Senate, that we also welcome this year number 20 and 21 of Black women who have ever served in the Virginia General Assembly, with our two new members, Delegate Angela Williams and Delegate Candy King. And so we just want to let for folks know that keep thinking about a lot of this as being that distant past, that it has just been since 1984, and we are on number 20 and 21, and we welcome them to the House.
Thank you. And I regret that they're unable to be with us, but I know they would enjoy the first press conference with the Black Caucus, but they also would much more appreciate the opportunity to be sworn in. And so right now they are being sworn in. And I know they would have chose, if they had a second place to be anywhere in this world, it would be with us. Dale, do we have anyone?
Mr. Chairman, it looks like we do not have any questions. I think we were thorough enough.
Thank you. And again, whether it's K-12 voting rights, justice reform, environmental justice, I'm very excited about a bill that I'm carrying this year alongside you all that focuses on clean cars. We are excited to champion these causes and look forward to the work. And if there's any member of the media that wants to reach out to us directly, I know if there's any questions that we can answer, we will be more than happy to receive those calls and questions, and look forward to a awesome 2021 session. And to my colleagues, look forward to working with you. And I pray that you all move through this space as healthy and safely, and with the conviction that I know that each and every one of you have in your heart. So with that, let's get to work.